as we look through these developments here. So it comes down to their concerns about keeping the UK tied to this soft Brexit, tied to these EU rules for goods. Your initial reaction to this news?
Well, my initial reaction is he started out thinking about what the Bank of England would be doing. They've made it clear that Brexit represents one of the biggest, probably the biggest downside risk to the UK economy. So now what we've had in the last couple of days is the Tory government has been trying to sort out a plan that will reconcile sort of the Eurosceptics with reality. So they came out with a proposal which looks sort of softish Brexit, and the hardliners basically wouldn't go along with it. So we've seen David Davis, who was actually supposed to go and negotiate this deal, leaving, his deputy leaving. This really looks like chaos going on just before Trump goes over to talk to Theresa May.
Right.
I mean, the reality is he may not even survive till the middle of next week.
Right.
So this is obviously a big piece of evidence here. This is ongoing kind of chaos. The party itself is tearing itself up, and the reality is the hard Brexiters have now been kind of mugged by reality that you're going to have to deal with free movement of people, you're going to have to deal with an Irish border problem, and you're going to have to deal with goods and services, and they haven't really been able to do any of that.
Right, and you teased it just now. Theresa May, how much does this hurt her?
Well, the reality is, I mean, I've said this on Bloomberg several times. If you look at this government, it's like watching ferrets fighting in a sack. I mean, it really is. The reality is that a soft Brexit is really the only thing that's kind of viable and doable. Businesses have made it absolutely clear. Bank of England made it absolutely clear. And the Brexiters, including the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson and others, have made it clear that none of that is acceptable. So it looks like something that's torn the Tory party to pieces in the past is about to do that. And keep in your mind, of course, there is the Irish question. What are you going to do about the Irish question? What are you going to do about a free movement of peoples? And what they've basically agreed is that there will be no free movement. And, of course, the other members of the EU 27 are never going to agree with that on a month of Thursdays. So this is this is literally politics being mugged by the reality of, you know, what's going to happen on the ground, what can you actually practically come through with, and do you hold all the cards when the other 27 countries really are the ones who are holding the cards? So, so this is a reality check, I think, for the government through May, saying the hard Brexit can't come. It's going to have to be something much softer, and the Eurosceptics and Nigel Farage and all the people who were pushing for the Brexit leave vote are very unhappy. So what you have here is basically chaos, and reality is maybe May will not survive through the week. Quite possible.
So, right. So what is the likelihood then, Danny, that Theresa May can push this Brexit white paper through the UK Parliament this week? I mean, what does she need to do to keep her cabinet together now?
Well, it's really hard to answer that. I mean, in some sense, the two sides are completely irreconcilable. One side says we want to just go, we want to be able to be, Britannia can rule the waves, doesn't need to have anything to do with the EU, and businesses have made it absolutely clear that that's just not going to happen. So in the last few days, we've seen Jaguar Land Rover saying, if you don't sort this deal out, guys, we're going to leave. Airbus said the same. BMW said the same. So you have, I mean, the reality is coming from the economics, from the business saying, you know, you can't be a little island on the coast of Europe without sort of reconciling these difficulties. And the politics of the Tory party that essentially is dependent upon a series of Irish Protestants holding this thing together. So I think the likelihood is that it can't be held together. And the question is whether there's a fudge, I mean, whether there has to be a collapse, whether there's a new leader, whether there's a general election. But this is really, I mean, it's sensible to be talking about this right now. We don't know what's going to happen. I think the probabilities are she can't pull this together. And we're probably going to see maybe a push for a new leader, maybe a general election. But I don't think we're suddenly going to see 25, 30, 40 years of discontent being resolved in a weekend. It just looks like more fighting's coming and chaos reigns.
Danny, before we let you go, is August still live for the BOE?
No. Well, they've said so, but I'm going to listen to Mark Carney talking this week. I thought that May was not live because of the data. I think August is I mean, they've made some suggestions. I think Carney maybe suggested a rate rise will come, but the data doesn't support it. I mean, the UK economy, maybe we're going to see a 0.4 for the second quarter. How can you raise rates at 0.4? There's no rising inflation, no wage growth, weaknesses in particularly in manufacturing and construction, but all the stuff you and I have just talked about. Brexit represents a major downside risk to the economy, and obviously a trade war does as well. So anybody in their right mind would not be voting for a rate rise, and if I was on that committee, I would be vehemently arguing against it. I don't think it's live, especially given what we've just talked about. Chaos from a government is not a situation where you want to raise rates when you've said the biggest risk to the UK economy is from Brexit, and those risks have become greater in the last hour.